I'll do an order of roll call. William Parkman is absent today. Brendan? Riley?
Yes, here.
Lisa Checkley, I'm here. Dennis Schaffner?
Here.
Shanine Medorno?
Here.
Timothy Blakely?
Here.
And one open seat that will be filled next month with Mr. McKay. So let's go ahead and stand and do the flag salute. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, right now is the public comment time in our meeting. So this time is set aside for any member of the public who wishes to speak on any item that is not on the agenda is more than welcome to come and stand and speak for 3 minutes. We ask that you do limit your time to give everyone a fair everybody else a fair turn, and it is in our Brown Act that we keep discussions to 3 minutes, and that we are not allowed to decide on anything tonight, but we can put it on a future agenda. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say? No? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and move forward to new business. Our new business would be approving our minutes from last month. Have you had time to look over the minutes from last month?
Yes, all motion.
You'll make a motion?
I would like to make amendments.
Amendments?
Well, it has to be a second first, and then it's additions and corrections.
Oh, it did, sorry.
I'll second.
Okay, so Shanine, Tim, and then Shanine, and then you're gonna make amendments. Gotcha.
I was absent from the last meeting, but I showed that I was here,
Gotcha.
so I will abstain from commenting on the minutes from last time.
Okay, we will go ahead and amend this. With the amendment of Brendan being absent from last month, does everybody else agree to accept the amendments?
Yes.
So you want to vote at this point?
Did you want to vote because we amended the minutes?
No. Is it just,
You want to table it till next month?
no, the way it works is that they move it and second with a correction.
Right.
So the motion would read that we, all in favor of accepting the minutes as corrected.
Corrected.
Yeah.
Okay, so all in favor of accepting the minutes as corrected?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Any opposed? No. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and move into our guest speaker. Our guest speaker will be Kern County staff and elected officials, and Jim Zervis. I do apologize, Jim. This is Jim. He will be in charge tonight.
Thank you. Everyone hear me okay? Yeah, okay, great. I'd like to start just with a brief introduction and we'll get started. I'm Jim Zervis. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Kern County. I work in the County Administrative Office. And with me today is our District Attorney. Cindy, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and folks that are along
I'm
with us?
Cindy Zimmer, I'm the DA, and with me here from our office is Jason Furness. He is a lieutenant with the Bureau of Investigation.
Chief?
Good afternoon or evening, everyone. My name is Aaron Duncan. I'm the fire chief of the Kern County Fire Department. With me tonight is Battalion Chief Jason Schillinger, and your Station 15 engine will be here momentarily.
And I saw a representative, I saw our lieutenant, there we go. Sorry,
Hello.
you were already, you're on. All right.
I'm Kenzo Lackey with the Sheriff's Office. I'm your lieutenant for Rosamond, Mojave, Laurel, and Tehachapi. I know several of you. I just want to throw something out real quick. We made some changes to our website. If you go to contact us, it's going to have my direct email address there. So now you guys have a direct line to me.
Thank you. And we have Lorelei Oviatt,
I'm here unofficially.
unofficially, but a very important member of the county team.
Hi, Lorelei Oviatt,
Director of Kern County Planning and Natural Resources and a over 40-year resident.
All right, well, thank you. One thing, as we get started, we are not here to tell you how to vote or to advocate for any position on this subject, which we're here to talk about, which is proposed 1 cent sales tax in the unincorporated areas of Kern County. We are here to educate. So we're here to explain to you all what this measure is, why it was brought forth, and to be able to answer your questions and do that to the best of our abilities. So I just want to really stress that we're not here to tell you how to vote at all. We're here to education, and we're doing this all over the county. So today we're here in Rosamond. We have about 25 of these scheduled all throughout unincorporated Kern County, just to talk with community members in unincorporated areas. Let me start by just talking about the difference between our unincorporated areas and our incorporated cities. In Kern County, we have 11 incorporated cities, right? You've got Tehachapi, Bakersfield, Arvin, Ridgecrest, and there's 11 of those. Those cities, those residents receive some services from the county. We provide library services, we provide district attorney services, health and human services. There's a number of things the county does for all of our residents, including those incorporated residents. Beyond that, we have about 305,000 folks like you here in Rosamond that live in unincorporated areas. And that's different because you all, and those 305,000 residents, rely on the county for all local government services, including public safety, right, police, fire, sheriff's deputies, planning and land use, all of these types of local services that you receive directly from the county. There's no city supporting you. Those 305,000 residents, like you folks in Rosamond, rely on those services from the county, and we fund those primarily with property tax and sales tax collected in unincorporated areas of the county. So in Kern County, that is largely driven by oil and gas and agriculture. Those are the base industries in Kern County, and about 90% of discretionary revenue for the county comes from those sources. So the county has about a $3.2 billion budget in total with a B, but only 400 million of that, roughly, is available for discretionary uses. So all of the other funding that make up the 3.2 billion, it really federal and state programs that the county delivers. So health and human services, public health, there are state and federal mandates that we deliver those programs to community members across the county. We have about $400 million in order to provide those frontline, those essential services to folks primarily in unincorporated areas of the county. So just keep that in mind. And that number has stayed roughly the same over the past decade. It's hovered right around 400 million. In fact, it's actually decreased a little bit, and we'll talk about why that is. So the county's economic base is oil and ag primarily. We are unique. There is no other county in California. There are 58 counties in California. No other county in California is tied to the oil and gas sector like Kern County is. We produce roughly 80% of the state's oil and gas total production comes from Kern County. That is a main economic driver in our county. That is the main tax revenue in our county. It impacts property taxes because of the assessed valuation of those minerals in the ground count towards property tax values. It impacts our sales tax valuations because our sales tax receipts largely come from business to business type transactions. So it's companies buying things from other companies, pumps, supplies, tractors in the ag industry, fracking sand, all of these types of kind of business transactions. It's our largest sales tax generator. The second largest is travel plazas, just oddly enough. So we have a significant number of these kind of travel plazas in unincorporated areas where people coming through stop and fuel up and get some food or whatever, and they generate a significant amount of our sales tax. Very little of our actual sales tax comes from consumer transactions. So general consumer goods. It's about 6% of our total, to kind of put that in perspective. Incorporated cities generate most of their property tax by residential development and industrial development. So they don't rely on oil and gas valuations because they don't have those oil fields within their property tax base. And they rely mostly on consumer good transactions that generate their sales tax. So the economics in the unincorporated county are very different than incorporated cities. And they're unlike any other county in California because of our unique tie to the oil and gas sector, both for employment, jobs, but also for just the raw tax base that generates revenues for us to provide these essential services to the county. So what's happening is our economy is being changed, and it's being forcibly changed by policies coming out of Sacramento, primarily impacting oil and gas and ag. In ag, we've got a water shortage that's causing significant challenges on the agricultural side. We are going to see thousands or tens of thousands of acres of farmland being fallowed because of the inability to get water, overdrafted water basins that are under state management now. On the oil and gas side, it's frankly a bigger impact. We have a state that is driving our oil and gas sector into extinction. They've shut down the ability to get new well permits. They've shut down the ability to get permits to do well stimulation. And by 2045, the state has set a policy that says there will be no more oil and gas extraction in California. None. That's remember, we produce 80% roughly of the oil and gas. That uniquely impacts Kern County. So if companies can't monetize the minerals in the ground, they're not assessed for tax value. So we've seen a decline in our property tax base because of the oil and gas sector. It doesn't impact the city of Bakersfield, it doesn't impact the city of Tehachapi. It has a huge impact in unincorporated Kern County. Our oil and gas valuation over the past 7 years is declined 64%. Now you can say, well, the gas price is high, oil barrel price is high. It has nothing to do with the price of oil. It has everything to do with regulatory changes at the state level, impacting the ability to get that out of the ground and do something with it. In total, the assessed valuation, which is the value of all the properties in Kern County, has increased over the past 7 years by 3.9%. That is we're dead last amongst all 58 counties by a large margin. Why? Because our oil and gas values have declined 64%, and they've offset all of the increases that you see in your home prices and industrial development and other things. So yes, we're seeing increase in other valuations, about 38%, which is frankly the average of about statewide. But we have to make up for a 64% decline in the oil and gas valuation. So you can see how those offset one another. So our assessed valuation is up 3.9% in the last 7 years. Remember, we have about $400 million in discretionary revenue at any 1 year. Over the past 7 years, that number has actually declined by 6%. So, and if you adjust it for inflation, it's down 31%. So the buying power for our discretionary revenue in the county is down 31% over the last 7 years. And that has impacted our ability to provide frontline services, particularly in unincorporated areas of Kern County, like Rosamond. We've seen similar lagging in our sales tax receipts because of the economic tie to oil and gas. We are working to diversify our economy. We are being forced into this position, but we are not just the oil and gas producer or main producer in California. We are the energy capital of California. We do more renewable energy in Kern County than all the other counties combined. And that aligns with state policies. But one of the things we're challenged with is that even though we're working with the state to generate more and more renewable energy solutions, the state has imposed an exemption on the solar industry, a property tax exemption that says, hey, all of these large-scale solar projects, they don't get assessed for property taxes. Now, we can understand why that may make sense on a residential home, but these are large-scale commercial investments that are funded by Wall Street that generate millions of dollars in return on investment. And they've earned themselves, through lobbying, an exemption from the state of California on property tax. We lose out on $20 million a year because of that exemption. Kern County does. And when we appeal to the state to end that exemption, particularly because of the impacts that their policies on oil and gas are having on Kern County, they have not elected to do that. We have effectively no voice in Sacramento on these issues. We try to build coalitions with like-minded counties, but the truth is that Sacramento is enacting these policies that have a significant impact, negative impact on Kern County. Over the past 10 years, between the oil and gas impacts and the solar tax exemption, Kern County's lost out on $500 million of discretionary revenue. So that's over a year's worth of discretionary revenue. So we're down 31%. That's why it is directly a result of our unique tie to the oil and gas industry, unlike any other county in California, and state policies that are impacting us in that way. So what are we doing? We are working to diversify our economy. I mentioned, the solar and wind, the renewable side. We are working to be a carbon management leader, the center of excellence for carbon management, which could be a whole nother industry in itself. We are working on diversifying more into advanced manufacturing and aerospace. We're working hard to diversify the Kern County economy to bridge that gap, but those are long-term projects. These things aren't going to solve the financial issues that the county is dealing with today, and we're going to be dealing with, frankly, it's going to be getting worse because we know the state is ending oil and gas extraction by 2045. And I'll add that today, or this week I should say, we were notified that there's actually a bill that's aimed to codify that into state law to end oil and gas extraction. So that's the reality we face, which means our assessed valuation from oil and gas will go to zero. It's just a matter of time. So we're working to diversify our economy. We're also living within our means, which means we've had to cut county department budgets in order to live within the discretionary revenue that we've seen, and that decline of 6% or 31% when adjusted for inflation. Those are real cuts. We've cut $44 million out of the county's general fund budget over the past 5 years. And some of the departments that have had those cuts are here and can testify to the types of service level impacts that's caused. I think you see it when you look around the community and you see the level of sheriff's deputies that we've got available to us. We've got closed substations. We've got a number of real impacts, frontline service impacts. That's what it looks like when we're living within our means, and those means are shrinking by 1/3 over the last 7 years. We have been polling the community over the past year. We did 2 fairly large-scale polls to understand the temperament, understand the needs within our community, what people say is important. We polled once about a year ago and then once in May and June of this year to understand, what are the needs. And what we've heard, particularly from unincorporated places like Rosamond, is public safety. People are concerned with maintaining and improving frontline public safety, recruiting and retaining firefighters and sheriff's deputies in particular, 911 response, property crimes, homelessness, mental health addiction, those types of challenges, but really the top 10 needs in the county, 6 or 7 of those top 10 were direct public safety related issues. Outside of that, there are some quality of life things. People are concerned with code enforcement, with, like I said, homelessness and mental health, and infrastructure needs. People are also concerned with economic opportunities, the ability to see local businesses thrive and bring in new employers. They're worried about their ability to provide in the future, which makes sense when you look at the outcomes, the employment outcomes of the state's policies on oil and gas and the implications of the drought on ag. So we've done polling mostly to make sure that we understand the needs in the community and align those needs with the budget that the county does have. So when we say we're living within our means, public safety is the primary concern, and that's by far, it's like 90% almost of respondents said they were concerned about public safety. So we're making sure that the county's budget is aligned that way. We're fortunate, our Board of Supervisors here has prioritized public safety for a very long time, so we are very well aligned in that way, but we are struggling to recruit and retain people to fill those positions, quite frankly, with a shrinking budget and a rising population. About $476 per person in Kern County. Our budget's been going down, or our revenues are going down, our population's going up. That number today is $317. So 476 to 317. That's real spending, real revenues that are available to service the people within our community, particularly the unincorporated community. So we know that people are concerned. We understand the resources we have. We are living within our means. We're doing what we can to diversify our economy. But we asked people, well, we were polling. We said, would you like to consider a sales tax, a 1 cent sales tax, to meet these needs that you've expressed? And a majority of the folks said they wanted to consider it. About 64% said they wanted to consider it. The county did this in 2018, didn't go very well, failed to pass. There wasn't a lot of education and understanding, public understanding of the needs within the county and the reasons for it. So we're out here to talk to everyone and make sure that people understand the reason that this was decided to move forward. So with that information, we did a couple pretty lengthy presentations to the Board of Supervisors to explain the community polling, to explain the financial challenges that the county has. And the board directed our staff to come back with a proposed ordinance that would increase a 1 cent sales tax in the unincorporated areas. They basically said, not basically, they did say, let the voters decide. Let the people decide what level of service that they want. If they're happy, if they want a higher level of service, here's a way to pay for it. If they don't, and they're satisfied with the current level of service or really the constraints, because we're going to see few challenges as we move forward, let the voters choose the level of service that they want. So the board didn't say, hey, approve a tax. They said, let the voters decide. So we crafted that ordinance. It is Measure K. We got a measure letter yesterday. Measure K, it's the unincorporated public safety vital services local control measure. Public safety is the priority for this because that's the priority that we heard from the community. It is a general tax, meaning that it does, I can't tell you today, all of it's going to go to public safety because as soon as we say all of it's going for a certain expenditure category, it then becomes a special tax. And as a special tax, it requires a 2/3 vote approval by the voters. A general tax requires 50% plus vote. So we have crafted this measure to provide as much assurance as we legally can on how this money is going to be spent, while still maintaining it as a general tax so that we can have that 50% plus one threshold. This is an unincorporated measure only. The incorporated, it will only be voted on by unincorporated residents, like folks in Rosamond. It will only be collected in unincorporated areas. And I explained to you that most of our unincorporated sales tax comes from business-to-business transactions and travel plazas, not consumer goods. Why? Because most of our residents do their major consumer shopping in incorporated cities, whether that be Palmdale and Lancaster, city of Tehachapi, down in the valley, it's the city of Bakersfield's the big draw. So it's not collected in those areas, it's collected in unincorporated areas only. And the resources that would generate, roughly $54 million a year, would go to provide for frontline services to unincorporated residents only. So this money will not go to the city of Bakersfield. It will not go to the city of Tehachapi. It will go to places like Rosamond, like Lake Isabella. We were in Lamont not too long ago. Our unincorporated community. That's where the funding would go to address the community priorities, primarily public safety, infrastructure needs, law enforcement, firefighters, those types of things. This is a sales tax, so it's similar to the existing sales tax. Sales tax in unincorporated, well, California sales tax has a minimum, the lowest legal level of sales tax in California is 7.25%. That's what we are in Kern County, unincorporated Kern. The highest is 10.25%, unless you get special legislation to approve a higher rate. So Palmdale and Lancaster are 10.25%. So Kern County is the lowest legal level, 7.25%. 6 of our 11 incorporated cities have already done a sales tax measure very similar to what we're talking about, that have increased it 1% to 8.25%. City of Bakersfield's on that list, City of Ridgecrest on this side of the mountains. Down in the valley, there's 4 more. Bakersfield being the big one, but Arvin, Delano, and Wasco. So 6 of our 11. 2 more are on the ballot in November. So City of Tehachapi and City of McFarland both have ballot measures very similar to this that are on their November ballot. Why? Because the existing tax structure, they've decided it's not sufficient to meet the needs for their residents. We're saying the same thing in Kern County. The existing tax structure is providing the level of service that we're able to provide today. We have no control over property taxes in California. Prop 13 locked that in, so there is no, we have very limited, as a county, very limited tools in order to generate local revenues for services, frontline services like this. That sales tax between 7.25% and 10.25% is one of those few tools that local governments have to generate local revenues. And when I say local revenues, it stays local. So of the 7.25%, it all goes up to Sacramento, and they give us back 1%. So of your 7.25%, we get 1% right now to provide services. This 1% is locally imposed, locally dedicated, and Sacramento can't take it. It is Kern County only for unincorporated places like Rosamond, legally. So that's the measure. It's sales tax, so it doesn't affect things like utilities or rent. It's not imposed on groceries. It's not imposed on prescription medication. There's a lengthy list of things that are exempt from sales tax, mostly kind of essentials. Those things wouldn't be subject to it. It would be subject to kind of all the other types of purchases that you make that are subject to sales tax. And but again, this is, the county sales tax is mostly business-to-business transactions. Large-scale solar projects would be paying this extra 1%, which would go a long way for us because they don't pay property tax and travel plazas for people coming through. I mentioned that 6, plus 2 cities in Kern County have already done this. So what this measure would do is really bring up the tax rate in unincorporated Kern to match that in those incorporated cities. And it would bring up our resources to be equal to those cities. So right now, our unincorporated residents have less money available because we have a lower tax rate than City of Bakersfield and those other cities. So this kind of equates that, even though a lot of our unincorporated folks shop in those cities and pay that tax, they don't get the benefit from it because they don't live in that community. This would bring up and bring an equality to that rate and to the resources available to provide services to folks like you and Rosamond. In California, I mentioned there's 6 plus 2 of our cities. About 90% of cities there's 462 cities in California. So about 90% of them have done local tax measures. About half the counties have done local tax measures, and sometimes those overlap. Ours doesn't. Ours is just unincorporated, but some of them overlap. If you look at all of California, about 95% of the population of California reside in a jurisdiction that has increased their sales tax through a measure like this. So 95%. We're the 5%. We're the outliers. We are at the lowest level, and that's about 5% of all of California's population. And so just to give you a sense, for what it is, we're proposing and what the landscape looks like in California. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to introduce your lieutenant to speak on behalf of the sheriff. And you're going to hear from a few of our public safety departments tonight on what additional resources, what they're, the challenges they're facing today, and what additional resources could mean to them. After that, we're going to be here to answer your questions and talk about this measure and just make sure we answer all your questions. So, Lieutenant.
So, real quick, the sheriff's office doesn't stand one way or the other with the sales tax issue. Really, this is something that's completely up to us residents about how this works, right? We have been operating within our budget. I can say that. Just like you have a household budget, I have a household budget, the sheriff's office has a household budget. Should the sales tax measure pass, there are certain things that we would love to see in the sheriff's office. We'd love to see the Ridgecrest Jail open again. That made a huge impact on us. We'd love to bring our staffing back to pre-2008 levels. When I was sitting here earlier, I was looking at my watch and my computer, and I noticed that it took 29 minutes for deputies to get from Tehachapi all the way to Rosamond for a burglar alarm across the street. Those are the those are the restrictions that we're living in right now. So that's just something to think about. Yeah, I'll be around after this meeting, and we can talk about crime and statistics that are.
Thank you all. Let me say this quickly. So I was here a little early and drove around the community because I haven't spent much time here and wanted to take the opportunity. And I told the lieutenant when I got here, I said, hey, I went to the park and behind the restroom that burned, which we're going to replace this year. I saw 2 homeless people smoking drugs. And I told the lieutenant, he knew, and it's a resource issue. I'm sure it's a resource issue. There are challenges here. I saw it today. It's probably not news to you people in this room, but I wanted to see what's going on in this community, at least while I was here. And so I thought I'd share that because I'm sure those are the kinds of things that having additional deputies in your community could help address, quite frankly. Turn it over to your district attorney.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming out to this meeting tonight. We have a very close relationship with the Kern County Sheriff's Department. When they make arrests on cases, they bring them to us. So we hold people accountable who have been arrested out on the streets. You probably have noticed in the last 10 years there has been a very large increase in crime. Homicides, robberies, homelessness, drug abuse, theft. It's been about in the last 10 years that we've seen this greatly increase. Why is that? That is because Sacramento's policies have enabled criminals. It prevents us from holding them accountable. We have a lot of challenges. So while crime has greatly increased, for example, 10 years ago in the county of Kern, we had 40 homicides. Last year we had 130. Who do you think handles those homicides? How long do you think they take in court when they finally go to trial? They take weeks, sometimes months. We have attorneys handling those. We have staff typing the complaints. We have investigators investigating them. They are very, very difficult, but that just translates to everything else. If you see that with homicides, what do you see with everything else? So we have a huge increase in crime and a decrease in personnel. In 2015, we had almost 100 prosecutors in the office handling cases. Today, we have 75. So I have to stay within my budget. I can't hire people with promises and then not pay them. I have to be responsible. And so we have a lot of challenges in law enforcement, very similar challenges to that of the Sheriff's Department. So I'm not here advocating for the tax. I don't like taxes. I don't want to pay it. Taxes. And I've lived in unincorporated Kern. I lived in a Rosedale pocket down in Bakersfield for over 15 years. But I can tell you, you have to really think long and hard about what level of service that you deserve in Rosamond, California. And whether or not, at what point are you going to get to the point where you call 911 and nobody comes, okay? Because it's heading in that direction. So I'll stick around after the meeting tonight if you have any questions for me. Thank you very much. Oh, and at this point, I think we have the fire chief, Chief Duncan, who wants to speak to you.
Good evening, everyone. Much has been said tonight about statistics and living within our budgets and where we are. I'm just here to kind of paint a little picture on where the Kern County Fire Department is. In the last 10 years, we've seen our call volume go up 53%. In Rosamond, your local area here alone, in the last 3 years, I've seen it go up almost 40%. You've heard the Sheriff's Department talk about homelessness, the DA's office talk about homelessness. We all see all the mentally ill that are out there. Every time you call 911, you get a fire engine to respond to those calls. Every time the sheriff can't make it, it leaves my firefighters there by themselves, waiting for a sheriff's officer dealing with those citizens. That's unacceptable. I have 2 jobs as your fire chief. That is to keep the community safe, and that is to keep my firefighters safe. Mr. Zervis painted a really good picture about the state and all of their regulation and what it's done to our budgets. In the last 7 years, since 2014, I've watched my budget shrink. I have to live within my means. So how did I do that? I stopped investing into my fire department. That means no new engines, no new fire stations, no raises for personnel, no opening new stations, bringing on extra firefighters to help the community. So while all the call volume's going up, we've added nothing to it. I've got fire stations out there that are built in the 1950s. They're not earthquake safe. They're not set up to protect my firefighters from cancer protections. I've got equipment that are running the streets of Kern County right now with over 250,000 miles, over 20 years old, that I can't get parts for. That's how we've been living within our means. 2 years ago, we had a brownout plan. Which stations were we going to close today so that we could live within our budget? We can do a lot better than that. So, as everyone said, I'm not here to advocate for it, but I'm here to tell you what I can do with this tax money if it passes. For the community of Rosamond, that would be adding another engine to this community. I would say you're in the top 5 of all call volume in the county. This is the busiest area on this east end of the county. You need a second engine out here, fully staffed, to respond to calls. You guys have all seen it. How many fires have you guys seen in the last 6 months? Every day, right? And it's not one fire, one engine. It's one fire, 7, 8 engines, because that's what it takes. So by living within our budget, that means I'm not adding firefighters. I'm down 40 firefighters right now. That means I have to tell firefighters they can't go home today. You don't get to go see your family because I need to keep you forced at work to keep the station staffed. I have a $30 million backlog of fire equipment. That's what it needs just to get to where we're supposed to be. That's not investing into the future. I have a $100 million backlog in fire station replacement. There's no way for me to dig out of that in my current budget. It's not possible. I have an aging helicopter fleet that is Vietnam era that I can't find parts for. I can't even find mechanics to work on our helicopters. We can do a lot better. So if this passes, this is what I would do for your community. I would bring on another engine. I would upgrade all the safety measures for my guys, make sure they have the best equipment they can to service your community. I'm around if you guys have any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and I'm going to call on our Planning and Natural Resources Director, Coralie Oviatt.
Thank you. I didn't intend on speaking, but I'm sure the Rmac, the biggest question in the room is, why'd you approve all that solar if it didn't pay anything? So I want to clarify, They do pay property taxes. What they don't pay is a reassessment on the equipment. So for example, when you build a big industrial project, there's an equipment assessment, right? So starting in 2019, all the ones that you've seen since then do pay, because the Board of Supervisors has instituted a cumulative impact charge. They all said they'd leave. You notice they didn't leave. Now the problem is that's not going to make up $54 million. It's going to recoup probably $17 million in one-time payments over the next 4 years, and then the ones coming forward will. And the battery storage all pays full property taxes. So battery storage is going to pay. The most important thing to know, though, is that they pay sales tax on all of those panels. It's millions and millions of dollars, and we only get a penny. They send millions and millions of dollars in a check to the Franchise Tax Board, and 1 penny comes back to wherever on the bottom of the form they put an address. So for the last 15 years, we've been making them put an unincorporated address. So they will pay another 1 cent if this passes. And that is millions of dollars. And I don't even think in the $54 million, because that's one time, that's actually been taken into account. It pays a lot of, because remember, now, if they bring the panels in from someplace else, they pay a use tax, and it's the same tax. So I just wanted to be clear. I appreciate you saying that. And we don't want to reassess solar panels on your house. So this exclusion, you put solar panels on your house, you don't pay any new tax. We don't reassess your house. But Big Solar showed up and said that should apply to us. And that's what we object to. Now, are we working on diversifying? Sure. We're working with the oil companies. We're going to do carbon capture, which is the new big thing. We're going to get green hydrogen and all these things. That will take us 6 years. And the governor's policies will be bankrupt in 3.5 because they're driving oil. And none of these oil companies, these are all oil companies, the big 3, who have divisions that could go bankrupt. They're California divisions. They could leave. They're not interested in leaving right now, but we have to do something different. So thank you so much. I just wanted to clarify that because this is the community that has provided that 60% to the state of California of wind and solar, and I'm sure they were wondering, what were we thinking? So I just wanted to clarify that for you. Thank you so much.
And I'm really glad Lorelei did, because that's exactly right. And that's a great example of us, really Lorelei, being creative, getting outside of the box, and trying to find a way around a Sacramento policy to help our local community. And so she's absolutely right. And those one-time payments, they won't make up for what our challenge is, but it's a part of the solution, right? And so, and what we're talking about today is potentially part of the solution. So, but that's thank you, Lorelei. No, the extra because they're one time, they're not factored into the 54 million. So there's potentially several more millions of dollars or tens of millions coming from the solar industry directly as those, if this were to be approved. So I am gonna take questions for any of us. We're happy to answer them. Before I do that, we do have a dedicated web page that has all the information related to this measure. If you go to kerncounty.com, look for Measure K, or the unincorporated measure. I think we've retitled it Measure K now. On that is a schedule for all of our meetings like this, but also all of the presentations to the Board of Supervisors, all of the actual resolution and ordinance, and all of those things. Now, I did neglect, I want to go back for just 1 minute before I take questions. When I talk about this being a general measure versus a special tax measure, and that we've kind of crafted as tight as we can, we have put some protections in there for the public to hold the county accountable to being transparent with this funding on how it's used. So this funding would be separately budgeted. It doesn't just get dumped into the county's $400 million discretionary or $3 billion budget, separately budgeted for. It's a component of the big budget, but we pull it out, be able to budget for it separately, have public disclosures on that budget. It's subject to separate audit provisions, so it'd be separately audited. And we would have public disclosures on those audits as well, available on our website and presented at a public meeting. It also involves a citizens advisory committee, so that will be a body, if this were to be approved, there would be a body of citizens involved in overseeing how that money is spent, to make sure that it's spent in accordance with how the measure is drafted, and what we're telling to the community about that. So I just wanted to clarify that, this isn't the same as a property tax or a sales tax. We're like, well, where did it go? You'll know exactly where it goes. And the public will have input into where that goes. So with that, let's take some questions. I do have a mic. We'll pass around here.
I'm pretty loud.
Pretty loud.
My question is, I'm retired law enforcement. I'm part of CORAC. We're the largest police association in California. And what we're seeing is people who are being elected are anti-cop, defund the police. Hopefully that'll never happen here. And I talked to Scribner last time when the measure failed. I think if the money was guaranteed for public safety, we love our public safety, and I would vote for it right now. So let's say down the years with term limits coming in, we get a group in here who are anti-police, anti-public safety. What guarantees, and they don't want to fund that, and they start taking that money, what guarantees are we going to have the same level of service later on? That's my only concern is that funding going to stay with public safety if we get a rogue group in there that
Yeah, look, it's a great question, and that's why I tried to talk about special tax versus a general tax, because legally, it doesn't have to be public safety. It can be used for other governmental purposes, right? The things we're talking about. Now, the sheriff and the DA and the folks that are talking about the needs in public safety are going to be advocating their positions for public safety, and frankly, I'm out here explaining to the community that this is to respond to those needs. That's the intent. There's nothing that guarantees it. We can't, or it becomes a special tax. But I think you have very strong advocates, and in Kern County, I know we value law enforcement, public safety highly, and that you hold your elected officials accountable for that. Is what I can say. And we have public meetings, so when this process is moving forward, be involved. Can I get someone to run the mic around? One of our guys.
I'll do it.
You can also vote to have the tax taken off. You can put it on the.
No, that's my concern. We love our public
Yeah.
safety here in town.
So that's a great point. If they go rogue, you can put a measure on the ballot to undo it.
I mean, look at San Francisco. They went rogue and they learned their lesson. So I'm hoping nothing like that would ever happen in Kern County.
No, you're exactly right.
I was just curious,
Yeah.
what is going on? Is 1% tax going to be adequate? And if so, for how long? Because, or is that just what you asked for that you think is palatable?
I think it's a balance. It's enough to get done the things that we're talking about, the vital services, the staffing level issues that we're talking about. It's enough to get that, and it's enough to bridge us. So we're talking about economic diversification and these projects that are going on. We've got an Indian casino that's about to take, that's a big economic diversifier. So we're doing a lot in that regard. The 1% is really designed to help bridge the gap between now and then and provide for those on an ongoing basis. So yes, it is.
Who's next?
Okay.
You're fighting over the mic.
I'm old fashioned, women should be.
Well,
So
Use the mic.
I
Use the mic, just
I
make
like
sure-
the
just
great
make sure.
education you gave us. It was very well done.
Thank you.
So you say we're going to get 54 million in this tax. How much do you think will be allocated to Rosamond and so?
It's not specific. It's not like you put it up based on population or geographic size. It really is based on need, and we'll listen to our department heads. It'll be the sheriff, district attorney, the fire chief, on what they need. 1 year, it could be an engine in Rosamond. How much does an engine cost now?
About $1 million.
About $1 million.
1.5 million.
1.5. So, but the next. Okay, so but next year, it'll be could be a different community. So it's not always going to be the same, but I can tell you that it is going to be for unincorporated areas. It's not going to go to the city of Bakersfield. Now it will go into the unincorporated areas like Oildale or Rosedale, right? Which we kind of consider Bakersfield, but they're not. And they suffer from the same issues that you guys do. The staffing levels down there are no better than the staffing levels here. So how much, I can't tell you how much will come to Rosamond. I can tell you that all of it will be in the unincorporated areas, and we'll be looking to our supervisors and their staff to help communicate those needs to us.
Okay, so I'm very much in favor of this 1 cent sales tax. However, people are expecting something back for that. So we get this 1 cent sale and we get none of the support services that we need because we are running really thin right now.
Yep.
It is just really going to put a black eye on everybody who voted for it and everybody who's pushing this. So I just would like to have some guarantees that we are going to have police service back and fire and those kinds of things back here in Rosamond, because it's needed.
That is what, I can't speak for the sheriff, but I will. Because I've heard him say it before.
Go ahead.
He's going to be the one that's standing in front of the board saying, this is what you promised. I went out there, this is what you promised the people, and we need to deliver. And, frankly, I think, we're all of the same mindset. So I hear you, and I agree with you.
Well, the other issue is that you can't hire people now.
Yeah.
And if we have all this money, how is all this going to come to fruition? Yes, hiring people that we need here in the community.
I know the sheriff is talking about,
The sheriff talked at the meeting last night about trying to hire people who live in the community and paying them a $2,000 stipend to live in Rosamond, to live in the outskirts of Tehachapi. So they will be local people that live here, and that's one of the uses that to try to get people that are deputies that live here and care for the community.
Yeah, thank you.
If I could interject for a quick second. So recruiting is always a huge challenge. There's do I need the mic?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Sorry, little man voice. So recruiting is always a huge challenge. I don't know what the answer is to that. If I did, I'd be the smartest man in the world. No one has been able to figure that out yet. But with the constraints that we're given, we're doing everything we can. I recently convinced a member of the community to join the reserve, so he works for free 1 day a week. That's the Band-Aid we're sticking on. So, but yeah, we're open to ideas. I mean, we work for you guys.
So
It's money.
It's money. So it's money. Look, these guys can work wherever they want. They can. I mean, they really can.
You're pointing your finger at me, sir.
I mean, the guys with the badge. Really. I mean, so do you want to work in Ventura, or do
No.
you want to work in Rosamond?
And I would say I live in East Kern.
Yeah.
At least half of your station works in East Kern. And we're here by choice. We're not here because we're indentured servants. We're here because we want to be.
That's what I mean. They are very employable. There is a law enforcement shortage across California. There's no question about it. We need to be more competitive. We need to be able to make this competitive and give people to come work in Kern County in the law enforcement profession. And the DA is absolutely right. We are launching kind of a pilot program that will pay deputies that will live in the substation they work in the rural areas a $2,000 stipend a month. They basically pay their house payment but they have to live in the community they serve. It's about community-oriented policing, right? And so we have to make it more attractive that they want to come here and not go to a different agency. And it's not just money, but money's definitely a part of it. And we need to be competitive.
Yeah, one of the things, I'm going off the old data, back in the day, it took like for 100 applicants, you get maybe one deputy out of
That's right.
Out of that. So that's what this, I don't know if there's still the same statistics, but
That's about true.
I have a question. Sure. Okay, so my question is, you said it was $317 per person approximately, correct? Okay, so for Rosamond alone, that is, let's say a $65,000 job for average deputy. Plus, anyways, that's over 140 positions with supervisory positions. and we still don't have no police. So I'm just wondering how that 1% tax is going to help when we have, I did the math real quick, we have plenty, we have over $12 million for Rosamond. I added it up real quick, for the census, off the census,
$317
per person,
per person.
plus population size, is about $12 million. So I was just wondering if that 1% is gonna actually bring deputies to our town.
Yeah, so it's not, that number is everything, like, out of the $400 million, right?
Right.
That's all of that. So
Right.
that doesn't just pay for law enforcement?
No, that's fire, and I
Right,
understand.
it's a number of county departments that receive portions of that general fund.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
no problem.
I'm former military police, so I'm completely pro law enforcement. My concern about the 1% is what difference is it really going to make? You said that we're only 5% that don't have this extra tax, 95% of the state does. How does our crime rate and fire response time compare with the 95%? Is that going to make a difference there? Because if you go down into LA County, it's horrible down there too, and they're paying 10.25%. The other thing that I would like people to consider is that I spend most of my money down in Los Angeles County because they have the Walmarts, they've got the Lowe's and the Home Depots and things like that. But if I'm running short on time, I'll go to Carl's, even though a number of their things are more expensive because it's closer and it's 7.25%. So paying a higher rate for that product is a little bit offset because it's lower in sales tax. And what kind of impact is that going to have, raising that rate on our small businesses in the unincorporated areas? When people make that decision, they're taking the whole cost involved there. So those are the two things I would ask you to
Yeah,
consider.
I appreciate it. And would you like a job? Because we need more law enforcement. We're hiring. But seriously, yes. So most, it doesn't surprise me to hear you say that most of your shopping's in LA County. That's true for most of our unincorporated areas. They're shopping in the incorporated cities.
The Walmarts and everything.
Yeah. So you're paying, 10.25 and not getting any benefit from that. But you're right. So there is. Now, I don't know what Carl's is, but.
Oh, the hardware store.
Okay, all right. So
It's a real hardware.
it's a real hard,
Just take
okay.
you there.
So yes, it would apply to most transactions in a hardware store. And so you would be paying a higher rate there. Now, as far as impact on local businesses, a number of, 6 out of our 11 incorporated cities have done this. And it hasn't driven their businesses under. If anything, the more people are shopping in those communities. So I think the bigger question is how can that additional revenue go to be reinvested in the community to bring more businesses into our community, right? And that's been some of our rural communities have had that concern. They love a hardware store or a grocery store because they don't have any. But so I hear, yes, so Carl's, the transactions would be higher. But if you look at the incorporated cities, Ridgecrest, right? Not Tehachapi yet, but they're considering it. Bakersfield, Arvin, it hasn't driven those businesses under that I'm aware of. So, yes, ma'am.
I'd like to say yes, the tax rate in Los Angeles County is much higher. And their crime is very much higher too, because in the city of Los Angeles and many of the other cities in Los Angeles, they have a political philosophy there in which they do not hold criminals accountable. 4 out of the 5 county supervisors in Los Angeles County are to the left and have the philosophy of defunding the police. Many of the cities throughout Los Angeles County also have that philosophy, have defunded the police. They do not hold criminals accountable, and the homicide rate has escalated. Our stayed constant during the pandemic between 2020 and 2021. Los Angeles homicide rate in 1 year went up 40%. It's out of control. So there's a lot at work other than, the tax rate there is higher. Sure, I have 2 DAs in background right now in Los Angeles County because they live there, they've been commuting to Kern County, I hired them, but they're gonna make a lot more to live in Santa Clarita and work in Palmdale. You know, but that doesn't mean it's safe.
Clinic to take care of families. Yeah, and if the county is issue those permits to those businesses because of the revenues, or why they stay open here?
No.
So, Lola, do you want to handle that
Every
one?
single one of them is illegal.
Yeah.
They're all
We
illegal.
don't issue permits
All the
for
cannabis is
dispensaries.
illegal.
Well, how they pay the taxes though?
They
don't.
don't. They don't pay taxes.
So why do they allow to be in our community only 200 across the street from the church?
That's what it is. We want to talk about the difficulty in enforcement on illegal marijuana shops.
We have spent millions of your tax dollars. There used to be 26, we put them out of business. We have a task force with the sheriff and the DA. We don't have enough money to continue putting them out of business. That's the other purpose of this funding. That's millions of dollars.
They don't pay taxes when they are legal.
That's a part.
Back and law enforcement.
So how long will it take for the community? So it'll take a year to just, if it's approved in November, it'll start being collected kind of mid-23. And so then once we have resources, we need to do the hiring and get people on board. And it takes, I don't know anymore, but I think a year to put a deputy on the street. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's actually a little bit worse than that. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to. I'm not going to make any promises. I'm not going to make any promises we can't get. But the reality is, right now, if we can hire 100 deputies, I don't know if the best place to throw them is in the jails or in the streets, because one of the issues we're running into is it's like whack-a-mole.
So
our staffing is so bad. Every time we throw someone in jail, we lose someone.
So we need to solve the detentions deputy. We need to recruit detentions deputies so we can get our sheriff's deputies out in the streets and on parole, and those are two pieces of the kind of law enforcement staffing that are really critical. But it takes time, you're right. But I can tell you, if you don't do anything, it's going to be worse, because our available funding, we are projecting to continue to decline, and that means living within our means with less resources. And the jail is a mandated function for the sheriff.
I agree in that increased tax, it helps the community. But again, like you say, sometimes what it really discourages the community when the county or the state, when a political is running for official for the position in the county or any part of the state, they only see one time, and the rest we never see them again. So this is one of the issues that unfortunately our community is poor people that spend most of the time in the road to go back and forth to work, and they don't have the time to attend the meetings. And so they really know what's going on until they get hammered with the tax increase. That's it. There's nothing they can do, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we will be holding some virtual meetings too. So if people miss this but want to participate, we'll have some online that they can participate in. So we know not everyone can be at our pre-scheduled meetings. So we'll be sure to get the word out there. As far as people coming in and asking for your vote, I want to be really clear. That's not what we're doing. We are here to explain to you why the Board of Supervisors put this measure on the ballot, what the financial issues underlying that drove to that decision, and what it would mean for the community, and answer your questions. We are not advocating for you to vote one way or the other.
You have the microphone. Why don't you go ahead?
Go for it.
Mine was not so much a question, but I think it's a great measure. We can only hope that the funds are used wisely, especially for law enforcement, because it is hurting our businesses. I'm a business owner. I lived here in Rosamond for over 20 years. A lot of you know me from the bank, Antelope Valley Bank. Where did the bank go? It left. And now I opened an immigration office, and I work directly with Department of Homeland Security. The same thing is happening to them. They have a backlog, they don't have staff, everything's taking long. So things like this have to happen for it to get better. And I mean, hopefully it does get better because it is hurting our businesses. I mean, I managed the Rosamond Plaza and all the business owners got together and we were thinking of hiring private security, and that's costing us over $300 a month for all of us. And they're willing to pay it because what's gonna happen, all the businesses are gonna leave and it's gonna hurt the population here in Rosamond. So I think it's a great measure.
Thank you. That gentleman in the back had a question.
Hi, my question is twofold. So first of all, is the hiring of new officers, fire and police, is that a recruiting and retention problem, or is it a financial problem? And if it's the first, which is what I'm hearing, how will an increased tax help that? Because you've already got the money there. Second of all, as far as I was under the understanding, it's the county's responsibility to provide services across the county. And so if it's already been stated that the majority of our money through sales tax goes into incorporated areas, why isn't this tax being considered across the incorporated areas as well in order to leverage all the money back out to the community?
Yeah, so good question. So on your first comment, I think it's both. The fiscal issue is related to recruitment and retention. So we need to spend more money on the recruitment efforts and think differently about that, but we also need to be able to pay more to be able to be competitive with other agencies and to do things like considering a housing stipend to get deputies to live in areas that they serve. So we need to be more creative in that, but we need more resources in order to do it. So does that make sense?
It does, but raising the salaries doesn't give you more people, right? Because now you're just spending more on each person.
So
when you talked about LA County defunding the police and all of that, what we saw here was the police were defunded in our substation clubs. So that's what we saw within our own county. So there's no guarantees necessarily that even if the money gets voted on by the community group that you mentioned to go to the Kern County Sheriff Department, that they will decide to use that money back into reopening the substation.
So we have vacancies right now, right? That we have abundant vacancies that we can't fill because we're not competitive with compensation. So we need to be able to raise that compensation level so that we can be more competitive and fill those vacancies. So does that?
It makes sense. I just don't know if that really works. I mean, if you don't have people here that are qualified and wanting to do that job, paying them a little bit more might be some, but I don't know that it would really.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a marketplace. And you heard from the DA a minute ago that she's losing 2 attorneys to LA County.
Riverside.
Why? Because they're outbidding us. They pay more, and she's losing employees. The same thing is happening in the sheriff's department. We're losing deputies to other agencies, and frankly, fire. And so, that's the issue.
I agree. I come from a family that's fire and police as well, and we all know that those types of public services include teachers and things, don't necessarily do it for the money. They do it to serve their own communities, right? So
yes.
I don't think
that's right.
I think it's pretty difficult to ask someone to move from Ventura to Rosamond because you're going to pay a little bit more.
Yeah.
I
think that the DA has a comment.
Bakersfield City passed Measure N, which is a tax initiative that would be the same as ours,
And they are taking our deputies. They're going to work for the Bakersfield Police Department. And they are now over 91%, only 9% vacancy. So they're making tremendous inroads in doing that. I don't want to lose any more of our deputies because Bakersfield, Delano, Shafter, McFarland police departments pay more than the Kern County Sheriff's Department. The sheriff had to close so many different units, like the game unit. The Sheriff's Department has a fabulous history of really doing such an amazing job for the community. It is really terrible what is happening until those deputies that we have invested in and trained to go, no offense, to Shafter, because they pay more.
I used to work in Shafter. That's where that comment came from. We did, and we stole them because we paid more, and then we intentionally paid more.
Not to keep arguing, but the natural resources you talked about that the state policies are making us lose money on basically in the county, were all that money, all that revenue was only going to unincorporated areas?
No.
Exactly. So that point is, you're leveraging a new tax on only unincorporated areas to cover that amount that you're losing. That was the whole premise. But yet, we're spending our money in Bakersfield. So we should be asking Bakersfield as well and the other incorporated areas to help pay for the unincorporated services.
So we receive tax money in incorporated cities also.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that we're using tax revenue from Rosamond to fund services in incorporated cities.
No, I didn't mean it that way.
Okay.
I said that because of the premise of this new measure is because we're losing money for the natural resources.
Correct.
Yeah. But the natural resources money wasn't only going to unincorporated areas.
I understand. Yes.
So now
Our money is going to us. $90 million a year just goes to us. And then the city gets their own.
Yeah. But now the new tax that's being the measure is only unincorporated.
And would only fund services in unincorporated areas.
Right. But my point is that you're offsetting the revenue from the
Yeah, I think I see what you're.
You had this money from natural resources that was going to pay everyone in the county.
No, our portion is the portion we're talking about. So there's another $20 million that goes to the city. We're not talking about, we're talking $90 million is strictly goes to the unincorporated areas. That's all we're talking about losing. There's other money, it's almost $280 million total. So there's all this other money coming from other places. So we're not losing, and we're not talking about any of the money that the city's losing. But I think it's a good point.
But are the cities also looking at a 1%?
They just don't have as much. Some of them aren't.
So yes, 6 of the cities already have it. Actually, 3 more are on the ballot. Okay, so Tehachapi, who doesn't have a measure in place, McFarland doesn't have a measure in place. So they're both looking to do the same thing. And Ridgecrest is going to add another 1%. So Ridgecrest would actually, if this measure passes on their ballot, would be at 9.25%. Now Ridgecrest is a very unique. The financial tax base for Ridgecrest is unique because of the federal base. That's everything there is non-taxable. So a lot of their economy is not taxed at all, which is just unlike anything else that we deal with. But my point is, yeah, everyone they are all looking at it with a few exceptions. We did talk about whether or not to do a total tax on the county. Maybe you do 0.5% on everything, including the cities. The concern is, we are concerned with being able to provide services in these unincorporated areas that have no city resources to support them. They're wholly reliant on us, right? And that's our concern. And when we looked at the numbers and we looked at the polling, we didn't want to risk losing a measure because people didn't want to pay more tax on top of Bakersfield's measure and money, and then miss out on an opportunity to raise local revenues for our unincorporated services, for people like here in Rosamond, because the funding that we've got and the service levels we're providing now are not good enough, in our opinion. You know, that's ultimately a decision that the voters are going to make. They're not good enough. And so we think a better strategy is to simply go raise up to match the cities, let the cities deal with their own issues, with their own local taxes, and let us worry about our unincorporated residents like you folks in Rosamond. And that's why the funding's dedicated to provide for these types of services. Frankly, there are certain, not to get too in the weeds here, but there are services, like in the Sheriff's Department, that are mandated by law. He has to operate the jail, right? So he has to, that's a legal mandate. He doesn't have to patrol. So if he runs short on money, he has to staff the jail. He doesn't, so where does the service reduction? It's in patrol. And that affects our unincorporated areas because we don't patrol incorporated cities. We only patrol in unincorporated areas. So that's why, we see a need for this funding here. But I understand your point, and it hasn't gone without thought on how we deal with the county as a whole. So, yes, sir.
I understand the concern about, what about Rosamond, wanting to keep the money here. Actually, we've done pretty well in the county. Do we have everything that we want or need here? No. But we have the newest fire truck, I think, or one of the newest fire trucks. We have some of the streets that we needed to have paved, were corrected. We've got a good library. I really appreciate you all coming out tonight and explaining these kinds of things, because up until now, I had just assumed that the shortage of firefighters and law enforcement was due to the requirement that in addition to having those skills, you also had to have, of course, the movie star good looks. Was I wrong about that?
Is that why you didn't get hired, Dennis?
That's exactly it. I'm fighting to this day, pal. Let me tell you. And could we maybe get the cheaper upholstery? $1.5 million seems like an awful lot of those trucks. Oh my God. But let's face it, this is late for these folks. And don't we appreciate them coming out and explaining this to us? Thank you very much.
So thank you all. I will stay as long as people have questions. So we can close the meeting down and let people go, but I'm happy to stay and talk with you if you want. And I just encourage you, if you're interested, go to our website. There's a lot of information about Measure K, the Kern County, public safety, vital services, local control measures. So thank you all for coming out. I appreciate
I
it.
just got one more question.
Why don't you come on up? We can talk.
Okay, so let me go ahead and finish the meeting real quick. Let me close the meeting real quick. Okay. Just 2 more minutes, guys, 2 more minutes. We do have somebody from Edwards Air Force Base that would like to speak to us as a community, so I'm going to turn the floor to them. Excuse me.
We're not done. In October, we're going to have an air show.
Yeah, we're not
It's going to affect the town. Let's hear what they have to say.
Thank you. So I'm Danny Gazelle. I've owned a home here in Rosamond for 30-some years. My son lives here now, and I live down below. I am the Chief of Community Engagement for Edwards Air Force Base. Dennis finally decided to retire, and I was able to take over his job. But we do have an air show coming up and a big STEM Expo, October 14th, 15th, and 16th. How many of you were here back in 2009 when we had that air show? Okay, so this is the people we want to talk to. So I'm going to bring up Major Sam Freeland. He is our air show executive director. Is that the right title? Director. He is the air show director. So he's heading up this whole thing, and he's going to talk about the traffic control with this air show coming up and other things.
Yes, so October 15th and 16th, open to the general public for those of you who are non-DoD card holders. Otherwise, the 14th is going to be open to those who normally have access to the base as a rehearsal, kind of a dry run for them. And then a huge component for us this year, too, is our STEM Expo. The Friday, we're actually opening up that schools across Kern, LA County, and the local area. And the initial interest count was 10 to 11,000 students. So really using a lot of those Edwards technical expertise and resources and targeting students to learn and inspire, whether they want to be in the Air Force or whatever they want to do to kind of serve their country in the future and give back there. That we are able to give one of our largest buildings on Edwards dedicated to that. Currently 50 to 60 STEM Expo booths with hands-on activities for kids. So for those of you who have kids who think that would be great there, I know I told my son that there's a robotics field and now he has to go. So. But I saw a lot of hands for 2009, so I think one of the primary concerns, if anyone remembers that, is traffic. I think in 2020, when they were drafting a plan to do it again, hired a professional parking consultant to get some numbers. I think one of the challenges, especially in the military background, is we are not experts in large traffic events. That's not necessarily what I'm trained to do.
What?
I safely operate an aircraft is what I get to do as my primary job. So we hired somebody, we got some expertise in that, and I think we've have a much better assessment of the limitations just associated with Edwards and a military installation that is obviously not built to say, how many people can we get on here in a day? That is not the purpose, right? The other 362 days a year, the goal is security and vetting people. So we currently know what our capabilities and limitations are, and we have some cutoff points. We also have significantly improved capabilities now with communicating with the general public to let them know what that capacity is, whether it be through our social media. We have an app that'll be rolling out here. We'll try to encourage people to subscribe to alerts so we can communicate with them on traffic situations so they know where it stands, and they can make informed decisions about trying to attend the show. Vehicle messaging systems, we've got permits for those along the local highways, so back towards Avenue A, D, people back in there, when we start to reach those capacity limits, we can make that decision and we can inform people so they can turn around. Another big one, big thanks, had a meeting with California Highway Patrol last week, and just the lights and traffic through the town, that they're going to be manning a lot of those intersections, and you'll have somebody there who can assess that situation and help traffic get in and out of there. Because Rosamond, just looking at the lights and the structure and that professional assessment, it is a choke point for the amount of people who are going to try to flow through here. So I think some of our biggest assets is communicating that, having our decision points, and being able to reach out to people before they create those problems. Because Edwards definitely is not made to turn cars around either too. And I think that was a 2009 challenge. Have a lot of space to put people, but once they're there, they're kind of committed as far as how much traffic backed up the base, and when they did make those decisions, what they had. So we're backing up a lot of those decision points and identifying targeted areas where when we do inform people, either at an exit, that they have the ability to turn around. Because I've heard a lot of inputs. I'm not sure if some of you have 4 or 5 hour wait times without making it in, and then you turn around and you make that decision on your own, and nobody had any kind of feedback on what the situation was or what they could have done to make it better. October 17th, 2009 was the last show. We have a 2-day show too. So as far as that demand too, spreading it out over 2 days should also get more people in it. One, the general public and everybody in Rosamond, give you better chances to attend, and also alleviate some of those pressures by giving people 2 choices. And if they get there early and we communicate on the first day they couldn't get into the air show, that they will have the next day as well as a backup, and they'll probably understand the situation, how early they need to get there. Those are some of our major challenges, things we've addressed, but I really think it's just going to be a great event, so I also would like to encourage everyone to come out there if you get the opportunity, specifically with being located here in Kern County. Your transit times and ability to get in there, your odds go up significantly of being able to attend an event. We would love to have you all there. It is the Aerospace Valley Air Show. So we are trying to incorporate, it is not the Edwards Air Show. It is for all these people, and I definitely didn't grow up in a community like this. The amount of ties to the aerospace industry around here, and some of that fanaticism and enthusiasm that we're tapping into there. Just when I tell people in my neighborhood and everywhere they work and what they do, they're just feeding kind of off that energy. So I appreciate everyone's support as well too in the local communities, and recognize that there will be some traffic stresses and everything like that, but I think it's well worth it in the end, especially an installation like Edwards, where you pass the gate and you have to drive about another 20 miles, to get there, that we're kind of out of sight, but you don't get that. And I'm very proud to be able to open up our gates and share them with the public and show, because I get to go to work every day and sit out there and peek out my window once in a while, and I get an air show every day. And we're so remote that I don't feel like anyone else really gets to enjoy that all the time. So it's really a pleasure for everyone at Edwards to be able to open that up, and families and everyone who wears the uniform and all our civilian employees to be able to open that up and share with you what we do. So I'd like to also open it up for questions, or if there's a concern you think we're not addressing or we could probably do better with.
Without traffic, how long would it take to get to where the air show is from here?
From
You said
here?
it was like another 20 miles after here on the coast.
Oh, I can answer that.
30 miles.
It's 8.5 miles. Once you see the sign that says "Welcome to Edwards" down here, 8.5 miles to the guard shack. It's another 7.5 miles then to the general's headquarters building, and the entry points are near that, so it's into the 15 miles.
Yes.
30 minutes.
30's probably a good planning factor if everything's moving.
Pack a lunch.
30 minutes is probably a good planning factor until traffic saturation happens as well too, because it's kind of a gamble on how long that'll take. We're looking to put in some messaging as well at our entrance, and possibly track a few cars, plant some people and say, hey, let us know how long your commute takes, and then feeding that information back through our social media and our applications. Hey, if you're at this point, I know some people here have probably been Yosemite, where it says, hey, you're 2 hours from point X. We don't do this every day of the year to have as much data as Yosemite does to say you're 2 hours from this event. But if we have a couple people plant at the gate and say, hey, when did you get to the lake bed to park? And how long did that take you? We can feed that back to some of our tracking points and our signs, specifically right at the Edwards sign or at the entrance, to give people current estimates if things are moving in steady state around a half hour. So.
Now, is the gates going to be open? Is there any security concerns when you got on there? Are people just going to be constantly going through?
Yeah, there's always security concerns, right? It's probably taken a majority of my meetings is kind of addressed to that, because it is very unique, and with any military installation and those programs where the traffic's going to be guided, our intersections will have traffic control points to monitor.
No, I mean, getting onto the base, are they just going to wave people through? Or they're going to
wave through.
Okay.
Yep. If somebody's not telling you to stop, they're going to be sending you on through. So we are going to be maximizing that. We've added an additional lane, kind of a counterflow concept to increase our capacity through the gates to be able to support that. So.
They are on the lookout for people with goatees.
And then,
so I rest my case.
And you can go to our website, avairshow.com, for current stuff. And I know they're recently reviewing the prohibited items list to make sure that'll give you a good essay. Everyone will get processed through an entry control point with a metal detector, and there will be teams there doing that for safety purposes. So, yes.
So, Sam, so in the 2009 air show, personally, I've been to every air show in Edwards since 1967. So, one of the biggest issues during the 2009 was the sheer volume of people that wanted to come out to it. But once they got on the base, they were checking cars. They were looking for, they were doing security checks on the vehicles as they came in, which backed everybody up into Palmdale and into Mojave. When it came to parking them out on the lake bed, they only had one to two entry points? One entry point into the parking lot. So when you've got this massive flow of vehicles and they're going through one gate, that's where the backup occurred. So this year, Sam and the parking consultant and all that, and everybody else on base, our civil engineers, they've got multiple entry points onto the lake bed. We're bringing in, if you live north of Rosamond Boulevard, the only way you're going to get to the air show is to go around through Mojave to the north gate, which actually is the quickest one to get onto the lake bed. So even if you live south of the gate, take Don Road and go on up there, get around to the north gate. That'll get you in faster, most likely. South gate will be closed to only air show personnel. So keep that in mind if you live, well, you're all Rosamond people, but the people in Lancaster won't be able to get in through the south gate. As he said, we have 3 lanes inbound once you hit that sign. The 4th lane has to be left open for emergency vehicle access. And then the same thing on the exit at the end of the day. It'll be 3 lanes outbound and 1 lane inbound. So that with Kern County Roads has agreed to reset the timers on the lights, right? Or are they all going to be flashing?
We initially engaged with Caltrans for the lights here, and they said it was pretty easy to give favoritism to traffic traveling east and west on Rosamond, and they would increase the green, but that's when California Highway Patrol came in with authority, because they have the bodies there to manage the traffic. So being on site, they can exercise their authority to wave that traffic through, and if they identify it, they'll be able to go to flashing red for those trying to cross north to south, to prioritize air show traffic to get them through.
And we're cutting it off 45,000 people a day, right? That's our intent.
We anticipate if it's steady flow, about the most we could get on there is 45,000. If that demand is steady from the beginning of gate opening until we would need to close it to give people a chance to turn around.
Well, I for one appreciate all the effort going into that, because for the 2009 air show, the guy on the base that I felt sorry for was the guy who got all the complaint calls.
And that was Dennis.
That would be me.
And now Danny's got it, so I'm trying not to do that to him. That is the goal.
Now it's okay. But it was, yeah, I don't give him my number. There were hundreds of complaints, and for every person that calls, there are dozens more that don't. So,
and it was all traffic related.
It was all traffic related.
So on that flyer, there's a barcode or a QR code. If you scan that, it's not going to take you to the air show website. It's going to take you to a form, because we need volunteers. We need a lot of volunteers to help with traffic control, trash control, fog control, just all the logistics. We can't take our cops and have them picking up stuff, you know, and moving things around. We need volunteers. So if you're interested in volunteering, that's an easy way to get you into the air show, and you'll have to work while the show's going on. But
yeah, there's a lot of other opportunities logistically set up and stuff too. We'll be identifying, got a lot of stuff to just set up in preparation for it too. And I know the folks on base would appreciate it when we're looking at how many people are in your organization. Okay, we're going to need them all, but when we do get volunteers, we have opportunities to offset that or utilize them in different ways, because it is a full team effort for the number of people. Our estimates are around 2,500 volunteers. Construct of Edwards is about 2,500 active duty civilians and about 8,000, or active duty folks and about 8,000 civilians. Trying to meet that versus our organizational structure is a challenge, and volunteers really help us with that. And then also kind of that Aerospace Valley Air Show concept too, of your involvement, making it more of a community event. We want to be involved. We want to share that with everybody. So.
Thank you so much.
And we're here for afterwards if
Yeah.
anyone has questions. That way you guys can wrap your meeting up.
Thank you guys
so
very
much.
much.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you for the time, everybody.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Appreciate it.
One more, we're gonna do Kern County Sheriff statistics real quick, and then we're gonna close out our meeting.
All right, I appreciate everyone's patience.
Thank you.
All right, so real quick, I know it's been a tough month for the community. As far as that fire goes at Glendower Park, as soon as that was discovered, I got a phone call from Supervisor Scrivener's office. So we do have our finger on the heartbeat. Real quick, since January 21st to midnight, the Sheriff's Office has had over 1,000 calls for service. I say over 1,000 because anytime we hit 1,000, it's hard to keep track and get a reliable number out of that. Out of those thousands, that 1,000 calls for service, 41 of them were from Rosamond. So that's you people calling 911, or you guys calling the non-emergency number and saying, hey, someone's breaking into my neighbor's house. Out of those 41 calls for service, 15 people were arrested, and out of those, in addition to the 41 calls for service, we also had 4 officer on-site initiated things. That would be a deputy driving around Rosamond, seeing something that requires law enforcement action that hasn't been reported. And as far as comparison of here to the rest of the county, Boron, 2 arrests, Mojave, 8 arrests, Tehachapi, 10 arrests, and Rosamond, 15. The majority of the calls for service that we got out of those 41 for that month would have been, unfortunately, domestic violence, assault and battery, crimes involving firearms such as shootings, grand theft, vehicle theft, and then 1 death investigation. I'll be around after to speak. I know we're running short on time.
Thank
so,
you, I appreciate
but
it so much.
Everyone's got my email address.
Thank you so much, you guys, for enduring this. Okay, we're gonna move on to director's referral and comments. Dennis, do you have anything for us today?
Oh, I'm still hoping that we can get someone from Lorelei's office to come and give us a basic briefing on how the environmental process works. And would love to get the Union Pacific folks to come in and talk about the hazards of back-grade crossings. But other than that, no.
Okay, I will definitely write that down and check into that. Janine?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Okay. Renee?
No, thank you.
Anything at this time? The only thing I have to say is I am looking forward to welcoming Mr. McKay to our team. I'm excited about that. We have, yes, very excited about that. Election time is coming. I did re-register to rerun another year, so I'm hoping you guys will vote for me, Lisa Chuckley. And it's going to be a great year. Okay, staff comments. Do we have any staff comments today? No? Okay, so I am looking for someone to make a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
So moved, in a second. Tim?
Lisa, who else is up for election this year?
There is myself, Brennan,
No,
So that would be.
I will not be seeking
Janine,
re-election.
I am.
and Bill Parkman.
Okay.
So there's 4 of us up for re-election. Does everybody agree to adjournment?
Yes.
Yep.
We are adjourned at 8:37.